Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. At long last, I finally have the pleasure of bringing you my Gorod Krovi hyper-detailed trailer breakdown. Every single thing of interest, in my opinion at least, is going to be talked about in this video. Make sure before we start that you have clicked the like button to show me that this is content that you are fond of, and without further ado, we can jump into the good stuff. The very first thing we see is this dragon insignia, which is actually a trace of one of the dragon posters from Zetsubou no Shima. Once that's out of the way, we see this statue, which is Treyarch's interpretation of the Barmali Fountain, which is a real fountain in Stalingrad, or in Volgograd as it's currently known. One thing that's interesting to point out is the fact that it doesn't look particularly damaged, but later on, it looks like that might have changed, so an interesting one to bear in mind for sure. We can also admire the little dent on this girl's chest here, which I personally don't think is anything, but I've heard other people saying looks like some kind of dragon insignia. Personally, I think that it's just basically a scratch, a little chip off the statue, but feel free to interpret it however you like. In the background, there are plenty of iron crosses, which is interesting because the Iron Cross is associated with the Axis powers, with the Germans, and not specifically with the Russians. So clearly, Group 935 or whatever other German faction is here has set up shop for a fairly long time, and as such, they've unfurled their banners for the world to see. I also really quickly want to point out the rather reddish or sort of burnt orange fire that we can see in the bottom right here. We'll talk about that more in a moment. Next shot is this inside kind of looking area. Nothing of particular note, so we'll move right on. Here we see our first look at the bus that says Belinsky Square on it. Very interesting that it's called Belinsky Square in the first place. Can't wait to figure out why that's the case and what exactly the significance of it is. And in the background, we also see a couple of interesting things. We see some Russian writing, which I have a translation of in just a moment for you all. We've also got a giant robot, and it's one of the Soviet giant robots, rather than being one of the original Group 935 themed giant robots that we saw on Origins. For the translation, we can't see the very first word, but the second two words look like either Valiant Soldiers or Valiant War. The next shot's pretty revealing because not only do we see a giant robot with its arms severed in the background there, but we also see another one of these objects that people have been speculating to be an Origins staff just poking out of a building. Unfortunately, with this shot, we can see a little more clearly that it appears that they are not Origins staffs at all, and instead is just one of the arms of the flying robot drones that we see later on in the trailer. Also, before anyone says anything, that pillar that you're seeing there, that little monolith, is not anything interesting, is just part of the surrounding wall of this area. There's also a tiny bit of Russian just near the statue in this shot. You can only see a smidgen of it, but we'll be translating that later on when we get a much better view. One thing I do want to point out is the fact that if you look at the green screen in the background, you'll notice that as they cut between the shots, that screen actually changes. So it is indeed flickering between different locations. Whether they're in the map itself or not is somewhat hard to tell, but it is changing just like in Horizon or things like that. Other than that, it's the same old stuff that I was talking about in my original breakdown of the image. We've got the 935 logo in the top left. We've got this interesting ball device thing in the background here, which is no doubt going to be massively significant. It's got a big 935 stamp on it as well, just like the robots in this map do. So I'm sure that thing is going to be very interesting to interact with in some way. And again, I'll just reiterate this so that people don't get mad. You've got the power switch in the bottom left. You've got this thing that looks like the drill that we see in the trailer on the screen on the left, that green screen there. On the green screen on the right, we see what looks like a map of the map itself, a map of the map, where hey, and it looks like the dotted lines represent different locations where the dragons might be able to fly you to, something along those lines. The last thing worth mentioning is the red light just above this big 935 bull machine thing. Maybe that's a trap switch, maybe it indicates that there's going to be dragons breathing fire in this area, or dragons stomping down like the giant robots, or something like that. Who knows? In the over-the-shoulder shot of Nikolai, we see several things. First of all, something rather inconsequential. There's a little dragon's head just poking out from behind the building in the top left-hand corner. You've also got the church steeple there, which has a load of lights on it, which is fairly interesting. You've got the presumed Origins staff that I mentioned a moment ago, which I'm now asserting to be the arm or the claw of one of the flying robots that we see later in the trailer. And then to the right of that, we see these letters, these Russian letters, which I believe are the end of the word for department store, but the other letters that would make up that word have either fallen down or been knocked elsewhere in the map, and as such, you can only see those final 3 letters on there. The plane in the foreground in the bottom right has an iron cross scratched onto it, and in the bottom left there's also a dead dragon, which we'll get a better look at in a moment. I also want to point out this board here because it's got some kind of circle on it, and later on we actually see another shot of this board and it looks like it has 3 more circles on it, and there are other boards with the same circles. Definitely something to try and puzzle out. Next we get a shot of Nikolai, and in the background you can see the mystery box light in the sky. Then we see Nikolai again, and he just looks constipated in this shot, man. Actually, to be honest, both him and Richtofen look constipated. It's pretty damn funny. You've got a big lion here, a lion statue, which may have some Monty significance. That's definitely possible. There's a giant robot's hand in the background, and there's also a giant concrete bucket on the right. Zasubo no Shima concrete statue Easter egg confirmed. Towards the end of this shot, we see a poster, and the caption reads, Sons of the Motherland, so that's clearly a Russian poster as opposed to the Group 935 ones that we see elsewhere on the map. The next shot of interest is this bunker area here. The slats coming down are really interesting. We obviously haven't seen that in Zombies before. Trying to look through the slats as well, we can see a few things. One is the fact that the church steeple that I mentioned previously is really rather turquoise. It's quite saturated in this shot. I don't know if there's a reason for that or what, but it's quite bright compared to the other buildings around Stalingrad. You can also see in this shot here that there's a quite interesting structure of some sort through the slats here, through the boards, but it's kind of hard to make out whether it's going to be at all significant in any capacity. And also, I've seen a lot of people talking about a perk machine here, but there is not one there. This shot of the zombies not very interesting, but we do see a lot of carnage in the background, lots of shrapnel and rubble and smoke and dust flying up into the air. It's unclear what exactly the reason is for it, but it's something worth pointing out, I think, because it does recur throughout the trailer. And we also see a dragon say peekaboo in the background. Zombie gets wrecked, we move on to the next shot. We see several things here. The MG42 in the bottom left, of course, that's a big one. We also see these red lights, which seem to indicate one of 2 things. Either, I reckon they're going to indicate the fact that that area is being fire-breathed upon, or there's potential that they could indicate the fact that the heavily armored kind of Panzer equivalents in this map are going to start spawning in. We do then see one of those very Panzers, and also in the background here, note the fact that there's some kind of explosion or something is breathing fire in that area, but we only see it for a split second. So maybe, like I just speculated, those red lights are indicating that fire is active in this area. Dragons are active, rather. There's also a kind of greenish light on the right here in this window. Could be a perk machine, but more likely, I reckon, it's one of the green screens that we saw earlier on. Here we see the MG in action, and you'll actually note here that there are 3 of the Panzer equivalents on the map at one time. So clearly you can have multiple of them running around. It doesn't just need to be 1 or 2 maximum. You can have several. We also again see those red lights that I mentioned, and there's also obviously this truck here with the Soviet star that's been overturned. Next shot shows an out of focus quick revive in the top left, and also a map in the bottom right, which we'll see again in a moment. Here's another shot of the square. In the top right, we can see planes flying overhead. On the left, you get another good shot of the dead dragon, and also, like I mentioned, look at those boards with the circular discs on them. They look so peculiar to me. They don't quite look like regular graves, and I mean, who sticks like big gold discs on graves? What's the deal there? Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, guys. And also, once again, the strange orange fire, this dark fire that is a different color to all the rest of the fire on the map, and it only appears here. It's really peculiar. I don't know what it signifies, but it's interesting to note. And later, we'll be seeing fire in a similar location that is green. So maybe indeed this is an indicator that there is something that can be turned on and green, or off and is then orange in this spot. I did a Google image search for Russian graves, and I found a couple of graves on the first page of the results with these medals on the graves themselves, so maybe we're seeing medals on the graves in-game here? Maybe, if they even are graves? Who knows? The next shot's cool because we see this dead dragon in the foreground. There's also a crashed plane. There's what looks like a parking meter. General calamity going on in the foreground. In the background, we have a similar calamity because a giant robot has fallen over and it can't get up by the looks of things. And then on the left, you have some really interesting details of this scene. You've got this engraved kind of carving on the wall, which we'll see a little bit later, and also this window thing that just looks really peculiar. It makes me think that this must be from a real-life landmark, but I haven't been able to locate it. Also note the fact that this is the area with the lions that we were seeing before, so there are a load of posters behind those pillars on the right side there, and there are actually two lions sort of guarding the stairs up into this building. Also, the flags atop the building on the right side are extremely interesting, and we'll point those out again later on. You can just about make out a trap switch at the bottom of the stairs leading up to those pillars, so if the shot later in this trailer is anything to go by, there's going to be a big flipper at the top of the stairs, which you can activate and use to help you defend that building. In the next shot, straight away, we get a really nice look at the fact that Dempsey does indeed still have his blood vials with him, so for any doubters saying, oh my goodness, the blood vials are gone, no, they haven't gone. They're all there. If you look through this trailer carefully enough, you can see them on all the characters, so fear not, the blood vials have remained. None of the characters here have any new guns, unfortunately, and in the background, it looks like there's a fairly standard electric trap. You can again see that really reddish fire, though. Next shot just shows a regular zombie, but then we see these bad boys, and these things look absolutely ghastly. It looks like they've been completely burnt to a crisp. There's hardly any meat left on their bones, but one thing that is interesting is if you look at its sort of stomach area, it looks like there might be a persistent glowing kind of orb in there, so maybe, just maybe, these things will be more susceptible to stomach shots than regular headshots or something like that. Maybe they're playing with the idea of its soul or its essence or something being visible in its stomach cavity. Or it could just be a lighting glitch and there could be nothing there at all. Next, we see the player popping a coagulant gumball, and the poster in the background says something along the lines of "Our valiant soldiers battle for the motherland," or "fight for the motherland." The next poster, which is a Group 935 poster, says, "We have come to set you free," or "We've come to free you. We are your friends." As the player turns around here, we see some 88mm flak boxes on the floor. In the distance there, it looks like it says Operations Bunker, and you've obviously got your zombies just trooping up that slope as well. Above the zombies, we can see part of another poster, which looks like it says something to do with either surrender, or capitulation, or maybe squeeze, or even potentially glory. It's really hard to work out what that word actually is. When the shot changes here, it's easy to sort of mentally fill in the blank and think that this is just the same running shot from a different perspective, but Nikolai's actually wielding a completely different weapon here and facing a different direction, which I thought was fairly amusing. Here we see our lovely dragon up close and personal, and the poster from the right is the same as before. It says Sons of the Motherland. When the dragon's breathing fire here, we get a very quick glimpse of a couple of things. We've got the map inside the trench itself, which I mentioned before, seems to be a sort of handwritten or hand-drawn map of the map itself. In the background on the left, we've got the poster that we've already talked about. In the background on the right, we've got another poster which reads, "Towards our future, now and forever," or potentially, "The future is following us, once and forever," something along those lines. And also, in this shot, like I mentioned before, it looks like the statues in the Barmely Fountain in the middle of Belinsky Square here have been damaged. Look at the girl's head. It's clearly got a massive scoop taken out of it, and she is missing an arm. In my opinion, unless she's dabbing here, it looks like the statues have indeed been damaged in some way in the course of the map playing out. We see the zombies get incinerated, then we see the dragon whose eye is the exact same as the eye of the Apothecon servant, which I thought was quite amusing, and then we go back to this sickle-wielding Panzer dude. Next shot's pretty mundane, but then the one after that introduces us to the new flying 935 robot things. We see here, thanks to the printed numbers on the left wall, that we're on the 3rd floor of this building. In the background, we've got the mystery box light and also the light from the drill that we'll be seeing momentarily, but we've got the flying things in fairly reasonable numbers. It looks like there's 3 or 4 of them around the place, zipping around, and it looks like they take a fair amount of damage to actually kill as well, because this is a pack-a-punched Argus, and it brushes it off like it just doesn't care about the shot at all, so they might be reasonably strong. There's also another poster down there in the center of the frame, which says Our Valiant War. We've seen that before. There's also another one of the maps in the bottom right, which is cool, and a trap switch. And if you look on the actual ramp itself, you can see one of the claws of these robots. So maybe you can shoot their claws off, or maybe when they explode, they just leave a load of rubble behind in various different pieces. Then we get a look at the zombie shield, or in this case, a dragon shield, I suppose. Mystery box light on the right, of course. When the player melees with the shield, it looks like it sends out a green burst of flame that kind of bounces and ricochets between the zombies in this room. Very cool effect that I can't wait to explore further. Also, I want to point out the flags in the back. Those flags, the white insignia on those red flags, is the same as the dragon crest from Der Eisendrache. So that's a cool link as well. And then also, of course, there's stamina up in here in the back left, and the Argus on the wall. When it goes third person and we see Nikolai running forwards, we can see even more posters in the background, and we get a nice look at his blood vials as well. The next shot shows basically the specialist ability of this map. It's like a charge punch. Looks very cool. Obviously, we've got Wonder Fizz on the left as well. Also worth noting that Speed Cola's up there in the top left. Next shot's really straightforward. Players sitting in a room with the trap on. There's a carpenter drop in front of them. Also, again, notice that really reddish fire in the background there around the place where those graves should be in the map. So very interesting that. You also see this phantom hand very briefly, which I thought was quite amusing. Moving on, we see the flipper, which I mentioned earlier on. So this is at the top of the steps where the two lions are. And then on the right, you can notice that there's a kind of green glow. So potentially this is going to be the location of Mule Kick or something like that. Maybe even Deadshot Daiquiri. Who knows? But there's something green in this area. There's also the engraved statue thing on the wall in front of us, which looks really interesting. It looks like a guy waving a massive flag, and then above him there are two dudes kind of pulling levers or something along those lines, and then a city above them. Very cool. Can't wait to explore that in-game because I'm sure it has some significance. We then see the NX Shadow Claws, and a lot of people have been saying, oh, PhD must be back because the player isn't taking any damage, but players never take damage in trailers because they've always got God mode on. So I'm not thinking that PhD is back for a second. I would bet a large amount of money against it. I don't think PhD is going to be in this map. However, maybe they're using that gobble gum that prevents you taking explosive damage. That's possible as well. So there you go. There's your sort of gamification of why they aren't taking any damage here. Then we see our wonderful drill dropping from the sky. Looks really damn cool. That smoke effect is absolutely freaking awesome. And then on the left as well, I just wanted to point out the fact that there's a clock. Or at least it certainly looks like a clock. So that's a cool addition. I like seeing those in maps. I'm sure it'll be set to 115 when we play, or 935, you never know. As the drill drops down, we see a box location on the left. We see this dead dragon. And like I said earlier on, we see that that reddish fire has turned green here. It's no longer that reddish flame that we originally saw. It's the same location because you can see that it's above the gravestones, but now it's green. Furthermore, and this is going to be a real crackpot theory here, okay? Like I'm going full this zombie here who's fallen out the window mode, all right? It looks to me like there is a small cup on top of each of these gravestones. A small chalice, and it looks like it's from that chalice that this green fire is emerging. And so maybe this indicates that there's one player in the game, and maybe with more players in the game, you'll have more of these orange fires on these gravestones. And then going further still, maybe this indicates that some kind of challenge has been completed, or maybe it means that some kind of Easter egg step has been achieved, or something along those lines. What if this is similar to in Origins, where each player has their own set of challenges that they need to complete? Maybe my tinfoil hat is on too tight, but that is what I'm assuming from the evidence presented here. The drill lands, and then boom, it is Raygun Mark III time. Dempsey on the left is wielding the Raygun Mark III, but note that only the right gun is fired in this shot. The left gun's effect is still a mystery. The projectile that it fires, or the effect that it has on zombies, or whatever, is still completely unknown. We can see that it looks totally different, but we cannot tell what exactly it does. We only know that the right side basically acts like a regular Raygun Mark II, or at least it looks like that sort of thing. It also looks here like as Dempsey's killing these zombies, they're getting zapped by the drill itself, and as the shot progresses, you see that as those zombies die, they fill up a little charge meter at the top of the drill. So clearly this is something similar to the skulls in Zetsubo in the sense that here we're going to be filling up the drill with the 115 or the souls or whatever from the zombies attacking the drill itself. Also worth mentioning that this sort of splash effect, similar to the Sliquifier, appears to be caused by the drill and not by the Mark III. Player gets a max ammo, then in the next shot we see them getting the FFAR in the box, then the Mark III in the box, then the PPSH in the box, they're all in there, they pull the PPSH out, it looks beautiful, and in the background as well, we can see a trap switch. The thing above the trap switch with those numbers on it, I think they're numbers at least, looks like something you'd see in sort of an old-fashioned elevator or something like that, so that's an interesting one. But then, the next shot just blows that question out of the water because we see all of our characters riding a freaking dragon. We've got the dragon insignia flags in the background there. We've got a dragon flying around in the sky alongside with us. We've got the mystery box light. It looks so damn epic. Also, could this be double tap here? It's kind of got the right outline for the machine, and it's certainly got a yellow light, so I mean, maybe it's possible, I suppose. Let's move on. We're nearly at the end now. It looks like we might have a statue of one of the Primus characters in the back of this dome area, which is nuts because first of all, it looks like there's only one of these statues, but they are in the exact same pose that we've seen the Primus characters in, for example, Der Eisen and things like that. So it's one of them, but who? I mean, it's Nikolai's map, right? So probably Nikolai, but all that really does is just get me wondering even more. Why is there a Belinsky Square? Why is there a statue of Primus Nikolai? Why is all of that here? I'm really looking forward to finding out when the damn map releases. If you're looking forward to it as well, smash the like button. That sounds good. Dragon flies up. We see a plane flying overhead. No, it is not the Mob of the Dead plane. There is no Mob of the Dead plane in this entire trailer. Anyone that says that there is clearly hasn't done a simple Google search to look at what the Mob of the Dead plane actually looks like, because it just doesn't resemble any of the planes we see in the sky in this trailer. We then see the dragon swooping around, and the final shot shows the dragon fire-breathing into this room here. Now, I thought it was really interesting that they have a very similar orange vignette effect to that which they had in Der Eisendrache when you were standing near the magma mounds when you were trying to get the fire bow. It's that same orange vignette on the bottom of the screen, which makes me think that this may be an area that the player can actually be in. This isn't just some random fire breathing here by any means. This is something that could be torching the player. You never know. So you gotta watch out for that one, I suppose. Hopefully, this in-depth breakdown of absolutely everything in this trailer has been interesting to you guys, informative and useful. If it has been, smash the like button. If it hasn't, let me know why in the comment section down below. And as always, I'll keep you posted on all Gorod Krovi content as it releases in the coming days and weeks. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.